Tonight on Free Minds TV, we examine whether public facilities such as libraries and recreation centers should be funded through user fees instead of taxes, which are paid by people who don't even use those facilities. We're also going to be bringing you footage which we shot at the Live Free or Die rally right here in Jaffrey, New Hampshire. We're also going to be bringing you the Downsizer dispatch and some news articles, plus a whole lot more coming up.
And welcome to Free Minds TV, where we challenge you, the viewer, to think outside the box. With you, as always, is Toby.
And Nick.
All right, we've got a ton coming up today. Later in the second half of the show, we will be traveling to Jaffrey, New Hampshire for the Live Free or Die rally. It was held just this last weekend. All sorts of groups were attending. We got a couple different interviews we're going to be showing you today, as well as some more we'll be putting up on the bonus side. One in particular, an interview with George Phillies, Libertarian presidential candidate. Will tell you a little bit why he's different from Bob Barr and what's he have to do particularly with New Hampshire residents. That's coming up on the second half of the show. But first, I want to get into an article that I was combing through the internet this weekend, and I stumbled across an article about the folks on Treasure Island. Treasure Island folks, it's a real town. Treasure Island folks, well, their town doesn't want to be, they don't have the money, they're pinched for money to pay for library cards. And it's a little bit expensive. Libraries, they're not very efficient, often waste a lot of money. Seeing that they're funded by tax dollars, there's no real incentive to run a business fiscally responsible, so they often fall behind on the budget. And as times are tough for many towns and many people, can't squeeze rock from a stone. A lot of people are going through hard times, can't raise taxes all the time, which is a good thing because, you know, taxes are pretty high already in most parts of the country. Well, they're saying, you know what? People who use facilities such as the library, the rec center, any public land that people are using, maybe they can help pay for it instead of a communist type system where everyone pays a part in it, even people who never go to the library at all. It would be a smaller fee for starting out, $100 for a library card in this particular article's case, but it is causing a lot of uproar with people who say, no, we need these resources. We need them to be free for everyone, no user fees, nothing. The communist type system where we all pay in us tax dollars and everyone gets to use them equally. What do you think, Nick?
Well, I think it shows, people are obviously going to say that that's really expensive, $100 for a library card. What about poor people? You know, they feel that it should be a public service.
Yes.
But think about it. If to make the library break even or come close to breaking even, if you have to charge $100 per library card, that pretty well reveals what it's costing the town, you know, to provide that service to one library user. And they would have to charge $100 up front to even, you know, make it a non-profit type situation where they're breaking even. So add that up, that can be a lot of money, especially in a smaller town. And obviously everybody wants to have access to a library. It's convenient to be able to just, you know, walk in and get a library card. But it does make sense that people who are using a service should be the ones who are paying for it, and people who opt not to use that service shouldn't have to pay for it. If I've never gone to a public library in my life, which I actually have, but let's say I'm somebody who has not, why should I have to pay at all for other people's books?
Yeah, see, I'm someone who doesn't go to a public library. If I'm going to read a book, I'm going to treat myself and go out and buy it. Well, that's a pleasure that I like to do because I don't have too much time to read too many books. So when I do read a book, I want to buy the book and, you know, treat myself a little instead of use books at the library. So should I have to pay for your library card even though I don't use the library? How much of a community service is this? And this goes further than beyond the library. What about recreational facilities? People want to rent out the rec, often owned by the town. Should they do it for free, or should they have to start actually paying for it? And the users who are actually using these products paying for it. There's also some towns who have tennis courses. It goes on to more and more golf courses. You're getting the picture of, should this be something that towns and governments are meant to provide? See, I'm no fan of government. I usually think that the bigger and bigger government, the less and less efficient you actually go. I think that anyone who's watched this show before would get the general idea of that we're not huge fans of government. We can accept it in small amounts, but let's get realistic. People are playing tennis. People are playing golf. They definitely can pay for it. I don't know why the town even offers those services. People are wanting to rent out the recreation center. I think they can start paying a user fee for that. Library cards, you know what? I know it's harsh, but I'm also okay with people who are using services paying for them. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a little bit jaded, a little bit cruel, a little bit harsh. I really want to know what the listeners and viewers think on this one, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's how life works for most other things. The government gets involved in these areas, but in many places, the government doesn't pay for, say, golf courses or tennis courses. Those are things people pay for privately.
Makes sense.
And it seems to work out okay. Whereas if you look to a state like Massachusetts or some other states that tend to have larger government and higher taxes as a result, you tend to see that they're publicly funded and they aren't free. The services might be free to the user, but everybody's paying for them, and if you add it up, you might be paying a pretty significant bill for those services.
Especially because they're less efficient because, well, the government is running them. Now, this goes back to what I think of government. Government shouldn't be intruding into your life, and they also shouldn't be taking very much money from you. Some people would say no money whatsoever. The government shouldn't be taking any money. But if they are taking money, let's start to limit it and push it back to the people who are using it. I know the word privatized is sometimes abused. It doesn't really mean what it means when we say let's privatize things, because it usually means sweetheart deals with the government. But seriously, could we start getting some of these services that the government has no interest in whatsoever, stop the government from using them, getting them back to, well, you know what, people are using these services? What about a library video store? Why don't we just make all the video stores Blockbuster? The government could pay for it. I'm not trying to say books are bad. People want books, people will have books. People who can't afford books, I guarantee a charity organization will start up and get people who can't afford books and want books. That's not going to be a problem. But let's be realistic. Should people be evicted from their homes because they can't pay property taxes because everybody else wants free library, free tennis, and free other things? I don't know. Tell us what you think. fmtv@freemindstv.com is the email, or 206-350-0123 is the talkback line. We'd really love to hear what you guys think on this one. How do we cut taxes, allow people to keep more of their money, while still allowing for people who can't afford books to get access to the library? I personally think charity's going to pick it up on this one, but I want to know what you guys think as well.
Yep, and I'd encourage our new viewers at NPC TV over in Maine to write in, because this is probably completely new, and some of the viewers over there are probably wondering what they're watching. So we'll hopefully be on every week after this. So if you hear something you agree with, write in or call in, and if you disagree with us, do that too. But we might be saying some things you haven't heard before, because the message we convey here on Free Minds TV isn't what you typically hear from traditional left and right commentary.
Yes, so welcome to the new people. We're getting a few new stations. We got one a couple weeks ago. Now we're on in Maine, spreading out a little bit, getting the message of, well, someone's got to be calling for smaller government at least, because a lot of the shows out there, well, they're calling for more of the same, if not bigger and bigger government. So people who are just tuning in, getting a feel for it, check us out. freemindstv.com is the email, is the web address where you can get some of the archives. If this is the first show you watched and you want to get a feel for what it's been like over the past few episodes, FMTV, freemindstv.com is the email. fmtv@freemindstv.com is the email. All right, let's get to it, Nick. This is a weekly segment for those of you who haven't done it before. What's this week's Downsizer Dispatch?
This week's Downsizer Dispatch there's not a whole lot to report, actually. August was a slow month, primarily because Downsize DC has just launched their new website. They had been testing it for a long time, and when it was launched, there were some problems. Some users had trouble sending messages to their representatives through the Downsize DC website. And for those who are new to the program, Downsize DC is an organization that attempts to limit the size and scope of the federal government, basically simply by setting up an easy automated system for people to contact their representatives on particular issues. For instance, the FISA courts, expanding warrantless wiretapping, while Downsize DC supports constitutional government and limited government. So clearly they oppose that, and they set up a system where you can fill out an automated form. It makes it very easy, and it sends it out to your representatives. And you can find out more about what Downsize DC does at downsizedc.org. But it has been a slow August for contacting Congress people. Congress is out of session anyway. So they are coming back. They're going to do a short session before they take a break again to go campaign. So usually what you see with short sessions is there's a lot of gimmicky legislation that gets pushed through, a lot of hijinks. So you really need to keep an eye on Congress, even though it's going to be a short session. So when they come back into session, I'm expecting, hopefully, people are going to be sending a lot of messages in September to make up for August. So go to downsizedc.org. Check out the website. Supposedly they fixed the problems that they were having, and it's a very useful organization. It allows you to contact your representatives, and it's nonpartisan. So if you want to see the government limited in certain areas, but you're not so sure about other ones, well, it's done issue by issue. So you can sit out writing your representatives on a particular issue.
Yeah,
So.
it's about the easiest way. You can quickly send those critters in Washington, let them know what's going on. Downsizedc.org. When we come back, we're going to be traveling to Jaffrey, New Hampshire for the, I think it's 3rd annual Live Free or Die rally. We have some footage from that and a whole lot more. Stay tuned. This is Free Minds TV. Free Minds TV is brought to you in part by Life Productions for your basic and semi-pro video production needs. From full wedding and event coverage to DVD authoring and distributions, lifeproductions.com. That's lyfproductions.com.
Log on to freemindstv.com for archives of the show, the Free Minds Radio podcasts, show content and the forum, ways to donate, the members section, contact info, and a whole lot more, all at freemindstv.com.
And stick in between segments of our show.
Okay, I can do that.
All right.
Hi there, I'm Russell Canning, and you're watching Free Minds TV.
And welcome back to Free Minds TV. This is Toby.
And Nick.
All right. We talk a lot about the government, but one thing that we don't talk so much about is the mainstream, what the mainstream press are talking about Barack Obama and the Democratic National Convention and the Republican National Convention. Yes, we have touched on it, usually ripping on either McCain or Obama, one or the other. We don't really take sides with red team, blue team. They're pretty much the same anyways. The two-party systems morphed into a 1.5 party system, if that. Either way, you're getting bigger and bigger government. So what we have been focusing on is maybe some of the lesser candidates. You know, there was a time, for those of you who like to vote, there was a time where you could go into the ballot box and vote for maybe 5, 6 different people might be on the ballot. Well, nowadays it looks like there's usually 2 people on the ballot, and those 2 people are Republicans and Democrats. Sometimes you'll see a third party on the ticket, but not too often. So we do like to focus on some of the third parties out there, see what they're up to. And when we traveled to the Live Free or Die rally in Jaffrey, New Hampshire, tons of different organizations were represented there. One of them were the Libertarians. A little bit interesting story on these Libertarians. George Phillies was there, who's not the national running for president under the National Libertarians, just in New Hampshire, where he's going to be on the ballot. We had a chance to speak with him, so let's go ahead and check out the video of George Phillies at the Live Free or Die rally in Jaffrey, New Hampshire.
So we're here with George Phillies, Libertarian candidate for president. And do you want to explain the situation with the ballot in New Hampshire this year, because it's a little confusing to some folks?
The Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, a year and a half ago, voted to put me on the ballot as their presidential candidate. They collected the signatures, they filed, and this fall I will be on the ballot where all of you viewers can vote for me. The National Libertarian Party chose a different candidate, unfortunately, and a fine fellow by the name of Bob Barr. They have collected signatures. They are waiting to learn if they have enough valid signatures to put him on the ballot. If he does, we will both be on the ballot, and New Hampshire will have a wonderful and unique choice, 2 Libertarian presidential candidates. Now, it seems there's also a lawsuit that's about to go on where some of the people from the National Party are suing to take the state party's candidate off the ballot. And I don't know what's going to happen with that. It hasn't even been filed yet.
So how would you distinguish yourself from Bob Barr, other than the fact that the state nominated you and national nominated Barr?
Let me take a few distinctions. I think we should pull out of Iraq as soon as we can, and ditto for Afghanistan. Bob Barr is of the opinion, well, after all, he voted for the war. Bob Barr is of the opinion that we should be staying, and it would be irresponsible to pull out immediately. I condemn the Defense of Marriage Act. In my opinion, Uncle Sam should stay out of your bedroom. Bob Barr wrote the Defense of Marriage Act. There are a couple of distinctions. I'm a social liberal. Bob Barr has a long record of being a social conservative.
That's quite a distinction. And what kind of feedback have you been getting from people who would generally vote Libertarian? Are you seeing a lot of them lean towards you, or Bob Barr, or someone else?
Of course, we don't actually know who will be on the ballot yet, but there are some Barr supporters in New Hampshire, and there are some very vigorous supporters for George Phillies. I'm running an active campaign. If you read all sorts of newspapers online, you'll see my ads. If you use Facebook, you'll see my ads. And very soon, you'll be seeing my lawn signs.
And where can people go to find more about your campaign, your positions?
On the internet, one word: Choose George. That's me, George Phillies. ChooseGeorge.org.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, while George Phillies I don't think he's going to become the next president, especially since he's on, even if he does get on the ballot, I'm pretty sure he will, but there's a chance, I guess it's in the courts, he may not. It would only be in New Hampshire, so he's not going to be the next president. But I gotta say, I like him more than Bob Barr, the ones the Libertarians are pushing out on the national level, because at least George Phillies, while he's an odd man, he can stick to his principles.
Yes, and you know, I'm kind of disappointed in who the Libertarian Party chose personally this year at the national level. At least voters in New Hampshire are going to have a choice if they want to vote third party. I'm not sure if there's going to be other third parties on the ballot. Not really sure where the Constitution Party and some of the other ones are at this point. I think the Libertarian Party, they always tend to draw the third largest vote total. So, you know, Bob Barr pulling in 11% in the polls, George Phillies' name not showing up yet. We'll see how it pans out. It'll be interesting to see who gets what percentage of the vote and how many people actually vote outside of the traditional left or right spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, if not, it's better to vote for George Phillies than probably the other two, because either way, we're going to get more government. Look, I know Democrats out there, McCain is bad, and Republicans, I also know that Obama's bad. See, we see it from both ways. That's the beauty of thinking outside the box. All right, let's move on here. We're running out of time. We got to talk to some other people. One interesting man was the Freedom Pastor. Nick got a chance to interview him, ask him some questions. Let's go ahead and play the clip first, and then we'll get a chance to talk about it.
All right, so we're here with Garrett Lear, the Patriot Pastor at the Live Free or Die Rally. And this isn't the first event you've been out to. I believe you were at the Anti-Real ID rally in Concord. I believe it was in 2006, if I remember correctly. And do you want to just talk a little bit about what it is you do when you speak, and basically what message you're trying to convey?
Well, as you said, I was at the Anti-Real ID rally in Concord. Actually spoke there a couple of times, and I go out all over the country and do radio and television for a variety of reasons. First of all, because I am a descendant of one of the people who was on the Mayflower and signed the Mayflower Compact. I have 388 years of ancestry in America. I'm also a member of the National Society Sons of the American Revolution. That means I have heritage of people who fought in the American Revolution. And besides being the reason they call me the Patriot Pastor is I have been for 35 years. I've been a Christian preacher, Bible preacher, but I'm also a constitutionalist. And so I go to freedom rallies across the country and talk about what the history of freedom and liberty in America is and the basis historically for these things. And a lot of people are surprised, for example, to see a Christian out at such a rally. And of course, one of the people that I usually portray is the Patriot Pastor, Jonas Clark, from the Battle of Lexington, April 19, 1775. Can you believe that this man, who is a pastor, the night before the Battle of Lexington, the British were going to his house to arrest Samuel Adams and John Hancock, two of the signers of the Declaration. The pastor was with them. The next morning at 5:30 a.m., he actually gave a message from the Bible from from Judges chapter 6 and 7, encouraging the Minutemen to fight. If the fight was going to be taken there, and one of the leaders was John Parker, and he was a deacon in that church, saying, we don't want to fight, but if they want to fight, let us start here. So I try to bring the truth of what America has been about and foundational documents, for example, like the Declaration.
Now, one thing I find interesting, I was wondering to get your perspective on it, is, for instance, Thomas Jefferson. Now, he was a man who, in the Declaration of Independence, said that rights are God-given, but he was also not religious in the traditional sense, at least for his time period. I know he might be better described as a deist, and the same goes for a couple of the Founding Fathers in particular, but clearly they had a religious foundation which underlaid the ideas of natural rights. But it always seemed interesting to me that there was some people then that they held religious views, but there was still some debate there, wasn't there?
Oh, absolutely, and it's an interesting point what you're bringing out about Thomas Jefferson. I always like to compare, for example, our second president, and while he was the second president, that's John Adams, who had Puritan ancestry, and he was a New Englander. New Englanders are very much different than people from Virginia, where Thomas Jefferson's from. Thomas Jefferson was basically an Anglican, or what we call today Episcopalian. And even though it seems to some people today, they put the name, and that was a name put on later, like the word that you use, deist. That was put on later by revisionist historians, because in that day, Thomas Jefferson helped many Christian groups. The French Huguenots, for example, were not getting a very good opportunity in Virginia because of the Anglican Church, and Thomas Jefferson helped them. He also helped to have prayer meetings in Congress. He was also an elder and a founder of one of the churches in Virginia. So he was not perhaps as vocal as some of the New England Puritans were about their faith, and had a little different outlook because of the type of Christian church that he was involved with. But certainly, the way that he wrote the Declaration, and even though he was the writer of it, he was not the final arbiter of it. As I tell people, actually, it was written by 57 people, 56 or 57, depending on how you look at that, because all the people that signed it endorsed it, even though he was the one that actually was describing it. So I think by today's standards, we would say that actually Thomas Jefferson was religious, but did not want to see a national Christian church. Just the same as Benjamin Franklin, and for that matter, neither did John Adams. They knew what the problems were with the national Christian church, like they had in England, like they had in Germany, like they had in the Netherlands. They didn't want that for America. They really wanted a non-sectarian approach, at least on the federal level, and left it for states' rights. States' rights were very important to them in a sense.
All right, well, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I appreciate that. Thanks.
So Nick, what do you think about this? I know that you got to ask some questions, but you didn't really get too much of your point of view in there. And I do want to say this also for the folks out there who want to see the full uncut interview. That's available on the members section, which will be recorded later after the show. So if you want some more content, $3 a month, $30 a year will get you the members content, where you can see the rest of that interview. But for the folks, what do you think about this?
Well, I agree with some of the things he said. For instance, the separation of church and state, it's a phrase that's commonly used, but the way it's been used, particularly by people on the political left in recent American history, has been to basically prevent people from mentioning God, whether it's in a public school or there's been debates about public access television. It's really said that if you're anywhere in a public space, you should be prevented from mentioning religion or evangelizing. But in reality, all it says is Congress shall make no law. So not a separation of church and state. That phrase does not appear in the Constitution of the United States or most of the state constitutions that I'm aware of. I do believe, however, that we should have a relatively secular society, that politics and religion should be separated. But people should be able to talk about their religious beliefs, whether they believe in God or not, in a public space. People have a right to exercise their religion freely, and in my opinion, there's no harm in, say, putting a cross up on a public common if you're going to allow, a Hanukkah decoration to go up as well. So as long as you're allowing everybody to speak, I think it's a fine thing.
Well, I do think, I just want to interject here a little bit. I mean, I used to hold strong views on this, but really I'm kind of agnostic, so I just don't care all that much. But one thing I do think is that where we run into some troubles on this is the public land in the first place. That's where we're running into the problems is, you know what? It doesn't matter what people are putting up. You're putting up a cross, a menorah, the atheist symbol. It doesn't matter if you're doing that in your front yard. Where we're running into trouble is when we're using the public property, which, why do we have so much public property in the first place? Well, I don't know. But I know you guys have a different opinion. We are running out of time, and we will get some more into this discussion on the members side where we're showing the full video, the uncut video. If you guys want to check it out, it's $3 a month, $30 a year. We also have some other stuff we're probably going to be getting into. Free Minds Radio, which is live on Sundays right now from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at freemindsradio.com. Second part of the show that we do, the other side. Well, we have some big announcements that we're also going to be letting the members know about first on the after show right here. So if you guys are interested in it, check it out, $3 a month or $30 a year. Any last thoughts on this before we get going? We only have about a minute left here, Nick.
Nope, I did disagree with Garrett Lear a little bit on how religious some of the founding fathers were. You can find some quotes from Thomas Jefferson that would be pretty controversial even today, where he says that he didn't find in modern Christianity, talking about his current times, or I believe he may have said Orthodox Christianity, one redeeming feature. That'd be a pretty, dicey statement for a politician to make today, let alone back in the 1700s when there were probably a lot more religious people around. So I think there was a diverse range of opinions among the founding fathers, and a lot of them had very progressive views on religion. Many of them were very traditionally religious. And they really set up a system where those two groups could coexist, and that's the important thing. Well, that's going to do it for us. We are out of time. More on the after show for members only. Check it out, freemindstv.com. It has been Toby here with you. And Nick. Check it out, freemindstv.com.
Free Minds TV is brought to you in part by freekeen.com, bringing liberty activists together with blogs, a forum, and more, all at freekeen.com. That's freekeen.com.